Thank you so much, Arjun. A very good morning to all of you. It's my pleasure to be at this webinar, which is having an excellent composition of delegates representing diverse sectors, banks, real estate, university, oil and gas, utilities, authorities, and equally complemented by an excellent panel with a great experience here. I'm looking forward to a good level of discussion and exchange. To set the scene, as you know, ESG is a widely discussed and debated topic, which is so-called non-financial reporting, sort of. Um, it has evolved from corporate social reporting or corporate reporting or sustainability reporting, which is sort of a nice to have, focusing more on philanthropic activities, a few beach cleanup, few engagements, to a widespread, to a more quantitative based reporting called ESG disclosure, which is expected to have decision friendly data. Now, it is no longer nice to have, it is a must have. Businesses are wanting to issue to publish their reports, and and it has become so evolved that investors are looking forward to those reports in order to understand how safe, sustainable, and useful would their investment be as they move forward to invest in those companies. So they would like to have would like to see the sustainability or climate credentials of the organizations that they are considering in order to put their money in. And when we have the reporting stand, when we have the ESG gaining momentum, we are witnessing a lot of reporting standards, frameworks, each targeting a set of stakeholders. You can have GRI as a standard that has a universal appeal across stakeholders, or sector-specific standards such as SASB, or you have the TCFD that articulates the climate attitude, or how exactly an organization is uh, impacted by climate change and how exactly the company impacts the climate. So those sort of risk analysis are being covered under TCFD framework, and you have CDP. So you have multiple standards and multiple frameworks. To add to that, there are certain digitally it has evolved so much that there are certain mining companies which are pulling the data out of those public reports and creating a database of reports such as Refinitiv. And there are certain organizations which take those mine data and create their own uh, rating, such as the Morgan Stanley MSCI index or Dow Jones index. So it is a huge ecosystem that has sustainability, ESG data, ESG mining, ESG intelligence, ESG analytics, and ESG rating as well. And it's no longer uh, nice to have. It's something which each and every organization would be compelled to disclose, mainly for the reason that they would like to uh, articulate or express their sensitivity to climate change. At the broad level, it all boils down to climate change, boils down to excessive increase in temperature that's going to be very catastrophic for the very existence if it goes beyond 1.5 degrees by 2100. So to reach net zero, you have to reach net zero by 2050. And to reach net zero, you have to target sectors. So all sectors are part of that. So you have the power, transportation, industries, real estates, hospitalities, banks, finance, shipping, aviation. And when those sectors are going towards zero, obviously money is an important part. So finance industries also get in. They have to investment managers get in. They want to reduce their portfolio emissions. So it's all one huge set of big ecosystem where everyone is driven towards net zero, and they want to project that. That's where we have the ESG report. And it is continuing to be quite vibrant. And for those who are taking stock of the latest news, a couple of days back, the Monetary Authority of Singapore, which is MAS, they designed and developed a platform under the project called Green Print. It's a platform based out of Singapore, which is having several levels. So it makes easy platform for companies to put in the data. And once you put in the data, that platform takes the data as per the required framework and helps in disclosure. The same platform has a registry to have a list of all certified projects. So it's called Green ES Genome. It's a nice name that's going to create an ecosystem to help all the way up to the investors. And it's going to go beyond Singapore as well. It's a very powerful platform that they had in mind, and they released it a couple of days back. So this is where ESG is moving, and it's going to move. When it is so exciting that it's so vibrant, there's a word of caution as well. We should be quite mindful of greenwashing that also grows along with side, unless we have clear understanding of what ESG is, what is the driving force. Is just a report important, or the contents of this report which articulates the company's perception is important? That's important. We need to do all that. We should not fall into the trap of just reporting for sake of reporting, because we have to be careful that whatever you report, be it 10 page or 100 pages, it's seen by the viewed by the people to, and it's not just one time action. It is, you are going to report continuously, and investors are going to look at how it was, what was the aspiration, what were the aspirations, have they turned their aspirations into achievements, or they have a definite milestone. So you publish something and you don't take action on it, your credential is going to be down, or it's going to take a hit. So that's a brief introduction, and then probably we can start. I welcome once again, and good morning to all of you and the panelists. Probably we can start. I would start by directing my first question to Dr. Samir. I think Arjun, an introduction is already done, right?
Yes.
Yes, it is done.
Yeah, sorry about it. Yeah, Dr. Nesma Partners is of course a construction firm, but it is quite diverse in terms of the composition of its activity. You have the key sectors, maybe oil and gas, aviation, real estate, hospitality, and industries. So you are in all those. In fact, each and every sector has its, as a sector, they have their own net zero commitment. Now, when you as a company represent a complete set of sectors, which has its own stakeholders and challenges around net zero, how exactly did you manage it? And as a person overseeing the sustainability within Nesma and Partners, talk us through how you engage with all these sectors and how do you manage this domain? Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. We are a contractor company specialized in many sectors here in the Kingdom, Saudi Arabia. Each sector, as you said, there is a requirement for carbon or carbon target. We are dealing with this. First of all, let's say in sustainability strategy, we are covering the three domains: environment, social governance, and I will come back with this ESG in detail more. But for the carbon, let's say this year we study exactly what our impact environment for each domain. We have three main sectors. Let's say this year we divide our work: oil and gas, and infrastructure, and building. We are reviewing each sector, what the impact of carbon footprint and what's required to do initiative to reduce our emission. And we buy in from the top management that yes, we will go with this those initiatives to reduce. We put first year we put target 5%, from 3 to 7% based on each sector and how much it costs, and the flexibility to fix, let's say, the initiative depend, because we are doing ABC contracts, sometimes contract only if client is willing to allow us to fix some initiative to reduce our operation. I'm talking about not client building, we are talking about our operation, our facility as a contractor. each target, each sector, you have to target separate. You have to put target separate based on each one. Now, you go back to the ESG. Recent, we got ESG certificate. It's a big achievement for us because usually here in the area, in the entire area, still ESG recent, we start talking about since 2018, we start talking about ESG stock market for investor. Our vision, we need to lead by example. We have the GRI, reporting according to GRI, and not only reporting according to GRI, but we took our report to GRI themselves, asked them to review it and give us their mark. As a private company, we cannot disclose many things. It's a private company, but in their standard, they allow us to come and benefit from their standard and comply with some of their standard, not comprehensive. And they review our report. They give us this mark as, let's say, to cover the 3 ESG. Recent in Saudi Arabia, just to to know, with Aramco, there is a local content program. It's called Iktifa. Before 4 months, they came. If they have option to increase your percent of local content by 1% if you have ESG certificate, and they put 2 platforms. We decide why not? We'll go to that platform. It's very cheap to get the certificate. Already we cover the environment. We have a strong policy for the governance. Environment, we are doing good. Still carbon, especially scope 3, but we build the policies for that, scope 1, 2, 3, and reducing our environment footprint. Plus, we are doing good in social, and we have policies for social. So we decide to go with one of this company, and we submit our policies, our plans, and they give us a certificate. I can share it with you. It's like score. They give you score to cover the environment, social, governance, health and safety, and finance. This is where you can assure or people or the market or investors or whoever want to work with you that your sustainability strategy align with the standard requirement, with the ESG, GRI, whatever.
Okay, thanks, Engineer. That was quite helpful. Let me move to the next speaker here, Anjali. Hi, Anjali. Hello.
Hello.
Hi, Anjali. I would like to ask you a question on the ESG part of it.
Sure.
Zomato is a multinational restaurant aggregator. Like it's got a lot of stakeholders, especially the delivery partners and the restaurant themselves. Obviously, when you address those people, the level of understanding on ESG or sustainability is going to be quite different, and may not be they might not even understand. So, from that point of view, how did you actually engage with them, and how is Zomato's overall approach to sustainability from that aspect? And under that understanding, how did you go about identifying your key focus areas, given that your stakeholders are quite so spread and maybe a different level of understanding?
Sure. Thank you, Jagannathan, and thank you to the Carbon Collective for having us participate in this panel. You're very right. In fact, the first step for Zomato to understand what issues to focus on was to engage with our very diverse stakeholder groups, as you've pointed out. In fact, if I were to just list, we are a tri-party platform. In India, we connect with, our platform connects consumers with restaurants from where they would like to order. And then we use the platform to connect with third-party delivery partners who are interested in supplying their sort of transportation and sort of labor service to to us to earn from last mile deliveries. So there are several parties involved, and we had to engage with all parties to really arrive at what issues should we focus on in terms of sustainability. We also took into consideration the environmental impacts of food deliveries, which are today actually well researched, because food delivery has played an enormous role especially during COVID, right? We had everyone was dependent on home deliveries. So having taken into account all of these stakeholders, including our investors, we've arrived at a set of 6 core sustainability themes. The 6 core themes for us, we call them are in order of, I wouldn't say in order of importance, they're equally important, but we start with the themes that will help us become planet positive. The first is climate conscious deliveries. And under this thematic, we are focused on reducing emissions from last mile logistics. And this is primarily through transition to electric vehicles. You might know that Zomato has signed up to EV 100. So we've committed to electrifying our fleet 100% by 2030. And it's quite a big commitment because, as you pointed out, Dr. Jagannath, our delivery partners, especially in India, in the Middle East, we have a partnership with Talabat. But in India, we are dependent on delivery partners who are often using second-hand ICE bikes for their deliveries, and therefore getting them to believe that electric vehicles will be better for them is a very challenging task. But we facilitate this behavior change, and we facilitate this transition through partnerships with EV rental companies. We have entered into multiple partnerships so that delivery partners can easily rent EVs for deliveries. And that's how we are planning to transition our entire fleet. And we've made the largest commitment of any delivery company in the world. We have committed that we will transition over 160,000 vehicles to EVs by 2030. So that's climate conscious deliveries. A second pillar is waste. As we know, food delivery is often associated with a lot of plastic. So plastic waste is a top of concern. Food waste is another area that we're looking at. In fact, we're exploring how we can repurpose used cooking oil in the Middle East as well. And then on the people positive side, we are very focused on hunger. We have one of India's largest private feeding and non-religious feeding programs. So sort of it's under a initiative called Feeding India that also supports people in times of emergencies. And the fourth theme is health, safety, well-being. We believe food is a source of health. We also believe that as a responsible company, we have to look after the safety and well-being of all our stakeholders, especially delivery partners. You would have heard a lot about road safety issues, especially in a context like India, which is where our roads are very chaotic. So safety is a top of mind concern. And the fifth area is, of course, sustainable livelihoods. A lot of people, as Dr. Jagannath pointed out, depend on our platform for part-time earnings or to expand their earning capacity. Restaurants rely on deliveries to be able to do more business from their locations. Delivery partners rely on deliveries to earn additional income. Sometimes they have a day job and then they take up deliveries in the evening. So a lot of people, a lot of stakeholders are dependent on this sort of Zomato for their livelihood. And then we look at, of course, diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I'm proud to say that we have, again, one of India's largest female delivery partner onboarding programs. We have over 1,000 women in our fleet in India, and we are looking at integrating disabled members of society in not just our fleet, but also in our dark stores. We are today also present in the hyperlocal grocery delivery segment, where we operate a lot of dark stores in cities. And these are the core themes that we've selected through a process of really understanding what do stakeholders want. So we don't go in and explain sustainabilities to stakeholders. We go in with an understanding of what is of interest to them.
Okay, thank you so much. It makes sense. And in fact, for all of you, Zomato, when I was going through the report, I found it quite interesting that they have reached out to even the street side vendors. Street food is very, very common in India across length and breadth. And they've also included them as a part of the channel partners, which is good. And so it's good you have diversified across E, S, and G in equal merits. Let me direct my next question to Alana Turpin. Hi, morning, Alana. Uh, on your role as a media group, it's quite niche in its own way. You are one of the first to publish the ESG report. I think in the year 2016, because the second report was 17-18. I think it's 2016, and you based your report on GRI. Uh, my question is, as a media firm, what exactly drove you into thinking of ESG or non-financial disclosure? And given that you have your headquarters out of New York, outside UAE, uh, how exactly, what sort of an independence did you have in choosing a particular framework? You chose GRI. Was it aligning to those that were used elsewhere, or you decided on the merits or on the basis of this requirement that you need to go for GRI? Just talk us through your journey.
Yeah, so first of all, I work for Omnicom Media Group, which is the parent company of a few different media agencies. We report into Omnicom Group, which is headquartered, as you say, in New York, and has, we are the media arm, but it has two different arms. So it's a huge multinational company, offices all around the world. We are headquartered for the MENA here in Dubai. And I think we were incredibly fortunate and lucky to have a very forward-thinking, inspirational leadership team. And our CEO at the time, 2013, 14, he's a philanthropist himself. He is now our chairman. He stepped up to be chairman. He's still involved in the business. But he was the one that really wanted to get the company involved and give it back to the community and doing more. So we started actually with CSR, and we started with some ad hoc activities and initiatives, and we were just kind of trial and testing at the time. In a time where it was still very new to the UAE, 2013 and 2014, and it grew from there really. So we started to understand what worked for us as a company, what fulfills us, what our purpose was, what was aligning more to our business. And we started to want to understand how better to focus our attentions and our efforts. So after a few years of doing this, I actually came on board into this role in 2015. So still to my knowledge, I am the only one who is dedicated to sustainability in the media and marketing industry across the MENA region. It's very unknown and unheard of, and my role has evolved now. But for a long time, it went from CSR to sustainability. I now look after the wellbeing agenda and diversity, equity, and inclusion. So that in itself was a statement that my leadership team really found that this was an incredibly valuable factor for our business. We started to speak to many people in the industry and decided that we wanted to report our sustainability agenda with the, as you say, GRI, in accordance with the GRI framework. So we actually launched our first report in 2015, which took some time to do. It was the first time we ever did it. And obviously we found a lot of opportunities for things that we were not reporting on, things that we didn't have data for, things that allowed us to focus and create KPIs for that perhaps we hadn't actually considered previously. You know, my chairman, when he saw this report when it finished, he actually made a comment to say, this is not just, you know, CSR sustainability, this is a business report, because I don't think even we realized back then how all-encompassing this report was going to be. So that's why it was important for us as pioneers in our industry. We've always been thought leaders in media, in the media world, what we do. And we wanted to continue doing that through other aspects of the business, and sustainability is one of them. So we launched our second report. Yeah, it came out in 2019. We haven't actually updated it since then because so much has changed, I'm sure, for many companies around the world over the last couple of years with COVID having an impact. But we regionalize our strategy. So while Omnicom Group, so our parent company, aligned themselves to the UN SDG of education, is not mandated to us. So we are given the freedom to actually localize and come up with a strategy ourselves. And that meant taking a good look at our business and understanding, okay, what is important to us? What is important to our stakeholders? What is important to our business, for example? And then aligning our second report to the UN SDGs that was really going to allow us to focus on achieving those.
Okay, yeah, I think that's interesting. Okay. Yeah, going back to your point on localization, that's in fact interesting. Now, let me ask another question to you, Arana. Your role requires thorough understanding of the materiality as well. So, as much as materiality mapping is important, the type of questions that you're posing within the materiality matrix is equally important. And when you say it, you are localizing, I presume that the choice of questions posed to the internal external stakeholders for this exercise is also localized. I did go through your EH report, and of course, from my experience, the material mapping exercise of what is important to internal external stakeholders from lowest to most important appear to be a somewhat unique for your industry. What was important to, and there appear to be some sort of differences of opinion as well. So just talk to us about were you happy with that particular materiality mapping, or was there any specific interpretation that you made out of that? It's important for people to actually understand how you interpret their views.
Yeah, so again, we're a media and marketing agency. So we're a service agency. We're not in production, we're not in manufacturing. We are technically a low resource company. And our biggest concern, you would say, that was brought out in the materiality index were governance and compliance risk issues and people. So with GDPR particularly becoming another big topic over the last few years, it meant that we had to really kind of rethink and understand how best and how critical it is to keep our clients' data, because we do manage our clients' data in terms of advertising, in terms of targeting, for example. So that is one side of it that we actually had to, on the back of that, because it was of an importance to our stakeholders, of course, and our business, we actually brought on someone specific to look after compliance within the organization. And it's a growing conversation globally, particularly with, for example, Google announcing a couple of years ago that they're going to get rid of the cookie. Just for everyone to be aligned here, the cookie is just a little piece of code that every time someone visits a website, that cookie is attached to someone's profile, and that enables companies to target you with relevant ads. So, you know, pros and cons for everyone involved in that, which is where GDPR also came into account. Now, Google has pushed back the launch of that a couple of times, and they've just recently announced they're pushing that back for another 2 years because they are not able to. Well, I mean, there's a lot of conversation as to why, but you know, the industry is saying, okay, it's because we haven't figured out right now how best to target our people in the right way, because you remove a huge element of what we do as an industry, as a whole marketing industry. So the compliance and the governance side is becoming a lot more complicated in our industry, and it's being led by the tech companies such as your Googles, your Facebooks, your TikToks, your Snaps, etc. But aside from that, the other, I think, probably more obvious issues that came out in this index were people related. So well-being, for example, diversity, equity and inclusion, mental well-being, these kind of things. And we have always said that people are our biggest asset. As I say, we don't have, our product is our people, for example. So it allowed us to kind of really focus on the ones that were material both to our external and our internal stakeholders. It gives us quantifiable KPIs for us to work towards things that, you know, probably we did know. There was no surprises that came out of this materiality index, but it actually, you know, justified, yes, we are on the right track, and we do need to keep going because this is what our stakeholders want and need.
Thank you so much for that. It's quite helpful. And let me now move to Catherine Bruce of WSP. Hi, Catherine. WSP is, of course, a multidisciplinary engineering arm firm having executed several projects. Catherine, before I go to your advisory role on ESG, I would like to discuss about WSP's ESG report itself. I've gone through that. Generally, when we set on the task of reporting, we look at frameworks, what to disclose, how to disclose, what sort of standard shall we follow, what sort of a reporting framework shall we adopt, and things like that. But in your case, when I saw the report, I found that you have used multiple frameworks, right? You have the GRI reports, and you have published a TCFD for climate risk assessment report. You have also aligned to SASB, UN SDG, GRI, CDP, or pretty much the whole key reporting standards. So my first question is, as WSP, what was in your mind, or what was your objective in publishing your own ESG report across multiple frameworks? That's one. That's curious. Just curious. It will be good for people to know how the architectural firms such as ESP, what sort of mindset it had in going for multiple platforms. And second, as you move forward with your normal ESG advisory service, what sort of a brief do you get from potential clients? What do they ask, and how do you engage and advise with them on ESGs? So just to begin with, yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Janakathan. It's a pleasure to be here this morning. You're right, we disclose against a large number of frameworks, and we call it the alphabet soup in the industry. There's so many different types of frameworks. Now, the reason behind that, I guess I'd stress the importance of the fact that frameworks and standards should not drive the sustainability strategy, and it should be the other way around, that a strategy then drives their disclosures. We might have heard recently in COP26, there was an announcement of the International Sustainability Standards Board, which is the convergence of these different reporting frameworks like CDP, TCFD, amongst others. There is a prototype available on their website, free to download if you're interested to look at what the convergence of these different frameworks are. But in terms of how we advise our clients on sustainability matters in general, the first is really to make sure that the client has a really clear purpose that includes why are they in business, what are the environmental and social benefits that their operations and service or products have positive benefits on the environment and society. Once you have a clear purpose, then that helps you to define that sustainability strategy. We want to shift the mindset of, disclosures being important, but actually, if you look at like a bell curve of performance, the most sustainable companies are not necessarily focused purely on disclosures. The companies that are sort of, in that mediocre side of the bell curve in the middle, they're the ones that are focusing on too many different material topics. They're looking at too many different things, and they see sustainability as a compliance exercise rather than part of their core strategy. And as a result, they're starting to mimic their peers. So that bell curve is starting to see clustering of all these companies. The ones that are towards the right side of that bell curve, the ones that are performing the best, I guess, in their industry and geography, are the ones that are really differentiating themselves by picking 2 to 3 max key material issues and really focusing their efforts in those areas. I'll take a couple of examples of what those issues would be. Say for a bank, that might be responsible lending and investing. For a cement manufacturer, it could be decarbonisation. For a healthcare company, it could be providing access to affordable healthcare. And by focusing on those core issues, that's when you start to see them advance against their competitors. And we help our clients in order to identify what those key issues are and where they should really focus their attention and their efforts. With that, you then have to develop KPIs. And it's important to remember that KPIs are different from targets. KPIs help to measure your progress towards a goal, but a target is a place you want to be in time. So we'd set or support clients to set what their target might be, for example, net zero emissions by 2050. And then we recommend then backcasting to get to where you want to be. So if you want to be net zero by 2050, where do you see the company by 2040? What would it look like? And what mechanisms and resources need to be in place to reach the 2040 vision? And then backcasting to 2030, 2025, and so on. And by doing that, setting interim targets gives people accountability of where they need to be as they progress through their sustainability journey. Another important part is to consider with each target, you might have a couple of KPIs that are used to get to that end target. And it's important to have both leading and lagging KPIs. So a lagging KPI, which is typically used in net zero, would be percentage reduction of carbon emissions. But a leading KPI is something like the amount of revenue that's spent on decarbonisation measures. So having these KPIs together, it helps to look at the whole picture and not just track one or two areas as well.
Thank you so much. And then let me follow it through with another question. As a consulting firm advising clients on various projects, how do you see the current trend in the market on ESG? Like as we know, DFM and ADX have put together some sort of a framework, a checklist sort of thing that are required by the listed companies. I see it's a matter of time before it moves on to other firms, the SMEs or whatever, to articulate its alignment with UAE's net zero by 2050 strategic initiative. So, are you seeing any sort of momentum or genuine interest from? I think you might be dealing only with real estate firms or developers or your clients showing genuine interest towards non-financial disclosure. What's your take?
Sure. So I guess in terms of how it's evolving, that in the Middle East, sustainability is a relatively new concept. As Alana mentioned, even 2013, there wasn't many people in the market that were looking at sustainability strategy. It's really at the moment currently still compliance-based mindset. I mentioned before, looking at disclosures and the risks associated with not adhering to sustainability principles. I think in time, we'll start to see the shift from a compliance-based mindset to companies that identify the efficiencies, the improvements. So when they start to implement these sustainability measures, they'll realize that they can save money, they can have operational and CapEx efficiencies. But then as that shifts, we'll then start to see the real true sustainability strategy, which is not just looking at compliance and efficiency, but actually having it fully embedded within the company's business model, and for them to capitalize on the opportunities that might have. And in turn, that's going to shift as well how we see those KPIs over time. So at the moment, we see a lot of companies looking at the inputs, so sustainability policies or environmental policies that they have in place, which then shifts to outputs. So with those policies, if we took, for example, carbon emissions again, the outputs would be the amount of CO2 that that company is generating each year. We then see that from inputs to outputs, then to outcomes, and outcomes being the percentage reduction in carbon emissions, for example. And then from outcomes, we move to impact. And that's actually where we take the amount of carbon emissions that you reduce and you quantify the benefits that that has on environment and society. So by monetizing carbon emissions or health and safety or diversity and inclusion, by putting a financial number against these metrics, that's the only true way that first investors can make peer comparisons easier, and also internally companies can use those metrics by monetizing them to make better decisions.
In fact, Catherine made a very valid point. It should non-financial disclosure of sustainability should be ingrained into the philosophy of the organization, like understanding it, committing it, achieving it, and seeing the impact as well. In fact, I recollect the earlier days when I was heading the sustainability department at Truckies, where it was the green building regulations used to be mandatory for buildings. And it used to be more of a complaints-driven market, where people used to have feeling that they should do something in order to get the building permit out or something like that. Whereas the real purpose is to design the buildings in such a way that the net impact of such a design, be it energy emission reduction, energy reduction, water saving, waste reduction, recycled content, all those things used to be actually understood and required, rather than taking some boxes just to get the complaints. It's a valid point, and to that extent, as you rightly mentioned, I would see a beginning of a complaints driven and over a period of time maturity driven, and to that extent we all have a very important role to not to allow greenwashing to get into that. Then that erodes not only the possibilities but erodes the trust as well. So on one side they'll have genuine people trying to report on the, as Catherine mentioned, the limited materiality exercise that is of key focus to those companies. Like say a brewery company might have water as a criteria, IT company might have data security as a criteria. So these are things that we should follow on, as opposed to putting a lot of matrices and creating a fancy report. A good point. And let me now move to Dr. Samit. You had mentioned about ESG certificate you require that you achieve from Achilles, right? That's a firm. Now, you said as a part of that process, you developed some ESG policies. It will be good for people to know what sort of a policy, to whatever extent you can disclose, what sort of a policy did you formulate that helped you to achieve the. I want to put my question rightly. Certification is not the must, it's not the idea. But what sort of processes or procedures that you established in the interest of the firm that eventually helped you to get the played its part in getting you the certificate?
See, first, which the most important for business growth is the governance. That's why we talk about carbon, social, environment, social, but the governance is the main, let's say, drive the business growth, how to govern all this activity. That's when I joined NISMA, they have a great governance system, ethical business practice The main, we have 3 pillars for the governance, let's say, part. We have the ethical and the anti-bribery policy and detail, data governance, and the cyber security. All these secured, and there is policy, there is procedure for that. We share it, and this is the main major item we give us more score for the governance. Second, for the social, for the labor practice, for the human trafficking, you show the policy, you show your action and the procedure, what action and let's say achievement. Again, it helps you. For the environment part, the health and safety, it's with the standard ISO or NEGOSIA, whatever they require, plus the energy or energy reduction, carbon reduction, scope 1, 2, and 3. Scope 1, we have initiative, we have target and the KPIs in detail to achieve year by year, plus same thing for scope 2. Scope 3, we start working on that. For all these policies related to the 3 help you. If you have shortage in one pillar, it's difficult to achieve high score, because at the end, this platform intend with the client, with Aramco, to select the best, let's say, performance for each supplier and subcontractor. For us, we are a contractor to them, and they will look for our total score. You have to cover the 3 policy, which is very important. You cannot put more. You have to balance between 3. Okay. Now, for us, we did this one, and we passed because we have the policies and we have the proper requirement. What we did, it's not only for us. Say ESG, we need our partner, our stakeholder, supplier, subcontractor, to come on board with us and to understand what the ESG, to start implementing the ESG, because we need their value to match our value in our business, especially when we are doing construction and for big projects, mega projects, a client who put the sustainability in the first target. To do that, we start screening our supplier subcontractor based on ESG criteria. We build this ESG criteria based on environment, governance, social. We have many questions, and we ask many questions about if they have the policy and what their achievement. We prepare this complete evaluation sheet. It covers the 3, and we start sending to our supplier, subcontractor. I know on the market, it's difficult, people first time to hear about this one. Even if someone he knows ESG, difficult to know. We give tolerance for 1 year in order to be able to come and start thinking, start implementing. We don't want them to go for platform. If they want, it's up to them. It's good for us, but at least for our platform, our screening, they have to comply. Start giving them awareness. Plus, then to reach point that it will be mandatory from our side. We don't want supplier or subcontractor, let's say supplier, especially overseas, they don't have a human trafficking policy or slavery policy. No, we need, especially from outside, they have to come and work based on our ESG values. This is, we see the way how we can distribute our awareness about ESG to our supply chain, impose it to them afterwards to see, yes, we need them to comply and start mandatory. This is what we see, the way how to make ESG effective in the market. Maybe you saw in the market many companies, I'm talking about construction industry, disappear because they don't have only proper governance. They are doing good in quality, good in construction. They are good in quality. They are taking care of environment, reducing, installing solar, whatever. But they missed the main part that drive the business growth, which is the governance. That's why we need people who believe same match our value, and this is the way how we can understanding of ESG. And this screening is done based on two things, based on GRI and SDG. We index for construction company in GCC. Based myself, I took the GRI, I review it, plus the Sustainable Development Goal, United Nations, match it and make whatever ESG related. So this is the way how we can say distribute it in the market.
Thank you so much, Doctor. Next to Anjali. Zomato is one of the first startups to get listed, right, in the market. So that throws in additional stakeholders, maybe the investors or many more stakeholders than what you were exposed to earlier prior to getting listed. Did that throw any additional challenge or challenges on you in terms of understanding your focus areas? And going forward, what are the key focus areas that you have in mind to continue this journey?
Come under several regulations or regulatory guidelines. And in India, I'm not sure this group will know, but India has made it now mandatory for the top 1,000 companies, publicly listed companies, to report on ESG as per what are called the Business Responsibility and Social Responsibility Guidelines. So they're called BRSR guidelines. They're very stringent, in fact, inspired by the Global Reporting Initiative, but they divide it into essential indicators and leadership indicators. And unfortunately, they have been designed for manufacturing. Services companies like ours struggle a bit. For instance, water is not material for us as a business.
Correct.
Because we're in online ordering and food delivery.
It's the lowest in the scale for you. I saw that.
Well, it's not the lowest, but because I think
after the first quadrant.
Yes, because we're not major water users like heavy industries and power, etc. But we still have to report on water utilization by source. We have to report on water recycling activity. So I think that is the sort of bit of a struggle, and probably not unique to us. A lot of companies will face this challenge of how do we report on indicators that are, I would say, less high priority in our materiality matrix. Additionally, we might be compared with others that are not from our industry. So that is a concern. But having said that, we are fully committed to meeting our investor expectations. And so we are going about the process of preparing for this reporting towards the end of the financial year. And where we genuinely don't have programs and data because those are not as high priority, we intend to fully be transparent about it. So if you ask me, it's a two-pronged strategy to deal with these sort of additional expectations. One is to, where possible, put in our measurement systems and report to our best ability. And the second is where it is not possible to offer full explanation and transparency around our operations, because as I've mentioned in the past, ours is a unique business. very asset light. We don't own a single office. We don't own a single dark store. So it does come with limitations on what is possible.
True. Thank you so much. And Arjun, do you have time for another question, or do you want to wrap it up?
We can wrap it up. There are very interesting questions from the audience.
Okay. Okay, just my last question. I will not. It's just a question that I wanted to ask, but I'm not going to wait for the answer because we'll go to the question answer session. That's surrounding net zero. Eventually, ESG or G, sometimes G, more of G. It is important, but when it comes to boils down to our action plan, climate action plan, irrespective of the sectors we decide we are representing, it all boils down to net zero. Net zero scope 1, 2, and 3. 1 and 2 are fine because it is under our control. Scope 3 is something which is going to be quite challenging. Leave alone decarbonization of scope 3, but estimating scope 3 itself is a challenge. That's something which I wanted to pose as a general question to all of us to realize that it is quite difficult and it is an elaborate process of understanding the upstream and downstream supply chain to get the scope 3 calculation. If you had had time, I would have asked all of you what is your view or what is your experience on that. Now we'll reserve it for some other occasion, and then I leave Arjun to take over for the Q&A sessions. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Jagannath, and thank you, panelists, for the such a wonderful discussion. So we have very less time for the Q&A session, but we will be taking 1 or 2 questions now, and after that we will have a presentation, and then we will open the floor for Q&A sessions. And after
just a suggestion, Arjun, to make it very purposeful. Although we are going to address only 1 or 2 questions, ask them to feel free to write as many questions as they want through email or whatever. And you take the responsibility of guiding with all the people and then giving them the answers so that they'll be quite
sure
content with the type of answers that you give.
And I mean to say 1 or 2 questions now, and then we will have a presentation, and then we will cover all the questions that's been asked.
Okay. Sorry about that.
Yeah. So to start with, from Nibras, we have the question is like, what is the best way to measure scope 1, scope 2, and scope 3 emissions? Like, what is the best way?
Who is it for?
All the panel members. I mean, whoever would like to answer.
Yes, I can answer. First, you have to identify which scope 1, 2, 3 to you. Okay. Once you identify scope 1, which what you are burning fuel to generate the energy, then it's easy to control, easy to monitor. If you have, I prefer using software and connect. Let's say if you have a meter, digital meter connected with for diesel or whatever you are using. If you don't have, you can just have a log and record whatever using for scope 1. You can have it in either a log or you can usually, we are not still using, but this is the plan for us to make a platform, connect whatever we have smart meter, build smart meter to connect and make this data as accurate as we need. Plus scope 3, you have to identify for us as a construction company. We have business travel where people moving around for our employee. We plan to record all this business travels and see the impact of carbon and see if there is alternative. Last time I did some calculation. I traveled from Khobar, our main office, to Riyadh, and we use alternative like train, and we measure how much carbon reduction I did for this, let's say, travel. Through your business travel, we can record waste, what we are taking, construction waste outside, again, for us, it's scope 3. And and then we can measure. But for us, scope 3 now only for our employee movement and whatever we are getting waste, send it our construction waste. Okay.
Sure. Thank you. The next question is for Ms. Catherine. So the question is, what is the best way to measure scope 1, scope 2, and scope 3 emissions? Like, what is the best way to measure scope 1, scope 2, and scope 3 emissions? Like, what is the best way to measure scope 1, scope 2, and scope 3 emissions? So the question is 1 second. Yeah. So how do you feel about firms avoiding GHGs under scope 3 because of the complexity? And based on your experience, do you believe that we need scope 4 to characterize avoided emissions? This is for Catherine.
Thank you. In terms of the feelings, it really depends on the company and the industry that they're in. For some companies, scope 3 is not material, it doesn't form a big part of their footprint. But for other companies, scope 3 is very material and does form a big part of their carbon footprint. Classic example would be an investor. An investor, if they're just looking at their scope 1 and 2 emissions, won't have such a big footprint, but their scope 3, which is their financed emissions, play a huge part in that. Scope 3 by nature is very difficult to calculate. There's around 15 different categories in the GHG protocol under scope 3. And challenge has had the positive benefit that our business travel emissions have reduced because they've been identified in need, not necessarily to travel the place. And we can actually do a lot of meetings virtually. So that's had a big benefit in terms of the realization of business travel and meetings and flying to different countries. And we realized we can actually do a lot of our meetings online. But my recommendation and what we say to our clients is to conduct that materiality assessment, understand if scope 3 is material to you, and if it is, what are the material categories within those scope 3 that are important to report on. And we have various tools that we use to help our clients to do those estimations and calculations, because a lot of it is estimated, and that's another challenge, that it's very hard to assure the data from scope 3.
Sure.
And then in terms of scope 4 as well, I think adding a scope 4 just would add more complication to an already very complicated space. So if we can keep with the scope 3 and have a clear methodology, which I'm sure will come with time.